Okay, thank you very much. And we're moving into our final, more or less final session, really, before we wrap up throughout the day. So it's my pleasure to introduce Chris Hammond from UK 100, who is going to talk to us about UK 100's role within the influencing strategy that we've been developing. Over to you, Chris.
Thank you very much. And that's fun. It's got all props here. Right, so thank you for that introduction, Scott. And I'm going to start by shamelessly complimenting my host so that you give me more time. But Scott and Jane are fantastic political leaders who really deserve, I think, a lot of congratulations for the work that you guys are doing at Calderdale. We work with a lot of politicians across the country, but the work that you guys do, the commitment, the bold political leadership you show, you should be really proud of the work that you do. I know that I think a lot of stakeholders in this room have echoed that sentiment. So well done to you both. We've been really impressed by the kind of the deep level commitment that goes from the political leadership, but also the officer leadership and the work across departments and teams. I'm not going to try and name all the officers that we've worked with, but we've been so impressed as an organisation with the work that Calderdale does. And events like this are really important because it brings together stakeholders, and those challenges that Calderdale has and the region has, they're everybody's challenges. They're not just the council. So bringing together stakeholders like this is so important as we go forward. So now I've done my shameless plug for you all. I'm going to go on to my session. Is this the clicker here? Oh, I've ruined it. There you go. Start again. There we go. So is it left, right, up, down? Down. There we go. So, okay. So who are we? So my name is Chris Hammond, Chief Exec of UK 100. We are what is called an in-country climate network, which is effectively a coalition of local government leaders from across the country who all wanted to see faster action in delivering net zero. We were originally formed around delivering clean energy for our communities ahead of the Paris Climate Accords. But we developed as a network, we grew and we deepened our commitment towards net zero and clean air. So we are 116 councils strong. We passionately believe that the way to get to net zero is local. A lot of people focus on international commitments, and COP always gets a lot of the kind of focus. We always look to the government to start moving and delivering. And those things are right. But actually, the work that happens in your communities, building those coalitions, setting those frameworks, influencing behavior, all comes down to the local. 80% of emissions are within the scope of local authorities. That's from the CCC, the Climate Change Commission. And the work that we do is to empower those local leaders, but also to advocate on their behalf on some of the opportunities and overcoming some of the barriers. So we've conducted, one of the things that we do is around developing the asks of local government leaders. So we've collectively taken the delivery experiences of councils from all across the country, both urban and rural, political leaders from all different parties, and escalated up what some of those changes that we need to see in this country, and produced 2 reports that we think, well, that's not the right image for one of them, but Powers in Place is the handbook for local authority powers in this country. So it was produced last year, and it was the first time we looked at all of the kind of levers that local authorities had to be able to pull to deliver net zero and what some of the gaps were. The report that I speak to now So we've aligned the work of this report, A, based on our members' experiences, but B, looking at the government's policy programme. So we know there's going to be Great British Energy. We know that we've got 1.5 million homes that need to be built. We know there's the retrofit challenge. We know English devolution bill is looking at the whole sector and what can change both in the regional authorities, but also every single council. We want to see more powers devolved down. We are still one of the most centralized countries in Western Europe. Too much power sits in Westminster and Whitehall, and not enough of it is able to be shaped by our communities and through their local councils. Despite local councils being one of the most trusted public sector organizations in place. We saw this during the pandemic, where people looked to the NHS for the guidance, and they also looked for their local councils. The trust that national government had compared to those two organizations was about fifth or sixth in the ranking. So at times of crisis, at times when leadership is needed, people will look local. So the research that we conducted, we went through and got a number of our councils. So we had about 51 of our councils input into the research. About 5 minutes already, my gosh. So I'm going to have to speed up. So 51 councils from all different political backgrounds, different areas, both politicians and officers. So it was a real sense, a real flavor of our network on some of the things that needed to change. So what are they? So the top three that came back from our members was the biggest barrier around limited funding and resources. It becomes a bit of and so what when we talk about finance. But over the last 14 years, the sector has had to deal with increasing demand. It's had to deal with reducing budgets. And this is going to be something that's really tricky to balance alongside the wholesale transformations that we need to see in our localities. And thank you to the budget. Yesterday, we've got a real terms increase coming forward, £1.8 billion, hopefully to start addressing that. And hopefully we'll turn a page now on shrinking local authority budgets, and we can make the right investments. I don't think anyone thinks we're going to be a wash of money anytime soon, but we can start making the right investments to deliver net zero. And the second one, which come through very strongly, was the lack of a statutory duty. So in the sector, there is no duty on you to actually deliver net zero. So if you think about all of the leadership that the sector has shown, that's been all ground up. I think that's something to be hugely celebrated and something we should all be really proud of. And also the endless beauty parade of projects. We call it the Hunger Games of trying to get government money. I think there's around 200 pots that local government can bid into. That's ridiculous. We need to have money allocated on a place-based system based on need, based on speed of delivery, as opposed to this endless competition. So those were the top three that came through in our report. In our report, we wanted to make sure the sector's really good, especially the NGO sector, asking kind of for theoretical billions of pounds to be allocated in. What we wanted to do in this report was make sure that we were absolutely grounded in the government's agenda and had two frames. One was soul and one was scale. There are things that we can do today that don't require billions of pounds that can make net zero delivery even better. And then we need to scale up and get that true delivery. So we focus on housing and energy as we see these as two really critical components for local authority leadership. And these are some of the measures that we came that fits within the Solve and Scale. One thing I'm going to just focus on, I won't read them all out, you can read them for yourselves there. We've heard a lot about, we heard the retrofit panel earlier today, which I thought was really useful at scoping out the challenge in retrofit. But for me, one of the biggest frustrations is our zero carbon building standards. And the future home standard needs to come in as soon as possible. The government wants to build 1.5 million homes. If those homes are built and they're not at the future home standard, at a zero carbon standard, we have missed a massive opportunity. And those homes will need to be retrofitted later on. And I think it will be like a PPI scandal where people, I feel like I'm surfing, where people, I'm going to stick off the stage. That will be good for the live stream, but not good for me. People will feel really, really aggrieved that we ducked a difficult decision now and stored up the problems for tomorrow. So if we now say between 5,000 and 8,000 is the cost premium to get to a future home standard, according to industry estimates, according to government consultation, and stats show from the MCS, I'm going to quote them here, although I'm not sure about the direct figures, so don't quote me entirely on it, but the saving over a 25-year mortgage period could be anywhere between £35,000 and £45,000, depending on energy prices. So it makes absolute sense that we build those homes at that future home standard. And we can look back at the past. Since 2016, when the future home standard and zero carbon building standards were due to come in, we ducked to that choice because of pressure from the industry, because of government lack of commitment, and 1.3 million homes were built at that lower standard. 1.3 million that are going to have to be retrofitted later on. So, rule 101 when dealing with any issue is stop making the problem worse. So let's get the future home standard sorted. It's my rant for today. But there are other things within there. Planning policy is absolutely key. We need to be building things quicker. We need to be moving better, but we need to make sure that the Climate Change Act is absolutely in all planning policy. Energy, we've heard lots of really good things about LEAPs. You're all going to be LEAP experts by the end of this day, but we need that national framework for local area energy planning. And we're starting to see now with the NESO and some of the RESP work that there is a kind of a recognition that we need to align the work that we're doing together on energy planning. I would like to see, and the report calls out, that we need to see more community involvement in renewing, in getting more renewables, and we need to see community energy benefits. If we're expecting communities to host tens of thousands of pylons, they should have a say and a stake. We can bulldoze over opposition as much as we like, but we must make sure that there is benefits to the renewable energy transition and that it's not all held centrally. So there are some overarching things that we need to do, as well as some of those specific policy interventions. We need to give local authorities that long-term policy and budget certainty. We need to reform the local authority funding model, and we need to have a statutory duty. And we need to make sure that there is a step change in the community engagement that we do as local authorities and as a sector to bring in those wide range of voices into the net zero energy transition. We develop a load of resources that are free for our members to use. So have a look on our website. We've got a couple of copies left, although if there's one left, you won't be able to take it because we need that. But go online, all our reports are on there. The Powers in Place report, again, that handbook, really useful. A couple of toolkits that we've developed. Again, we try to make accessing a lot of these subjects as easy as possible, as relevant to local authorities as possible, and based on the leadership of place, not on the technical knowledge, where there are many other organizations that will be able to help you. So thank you very much for listening, and do have a little look on our Knowledge Hub website. If you're a member of UK 100, our email address is there. The team's over there. Do come and say hi. Thank you very much, Scott.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris, for that. And now we're going to move towards speaking around how we've really capitalized on the partnership we've got with UK 100 to develop a robust and inclusive influencing strategy for Calderdale. So last year, the Climate Action Partnership, which I chair, published our Climate Action Plan, setting out the steps we need to take to reach net zero across Calderdale. And this was done with a variety of stakeholders, many of whom are in the room, cross-party, with the Youth Council, and with a massive amount of consultation as well, through schools, through faith leaders, through the voluntary sector, through transportation, housing, and everything in between. So the partnership is made up of that broad sector as well, and we're very important that we've got local businesses as well within that conversation. So the Climate Action Plan is split into a number of themes, and you can see them here, and sort of influencing sits at the top of it really, because without that we're really going to struggle. There's only so much we can do within borough. So it's really key that we have something that looks beyond our sort of boundaries. We do recognise as well that many of the changes needed in policy and services are out of our control, as I've said. Our influencing strategy sets out some of the changes we need to achieve, such as in areas like transportation, that we need to do as a collective piece of work to show how we can work not just with the sub-regional and devolved authority that we're a part of, but also as part of a new government as well. So in 2023, the partnership committed to producing an influencing strategy. And the commitments recognised that some actions within the Calderdale Climate Action Plan would be pretty much impossible to deliver without changes in local, regional and national policy, alongside actions and contributions from bodies that operate at those levels too. And developing the influencing strategy has been a process of considering the goals of the Climate Action Plan, identifying barriers and working out how to overcome them. And that work has been massively supported by UK 100. So thank you so much for that help. And I know our officers and members have been hugely thankful for the support that you've given us in developing that. It's been developed using detailed research and discussions with cross-party councillors, including Together Housing and the NHS and local businesses, as well as activist groups like Green New Deal, who I can see in the room. So it's important that we speak to everyone and develop those conversations and actually create trusted spaces where we can have honest and frank discussions, regardless of whether we agree on everything, as well as speaking to other climate partnership partners as well across the borough, of which there are many. We know that our voices and actions are always strongest together, and I'm really proud that we're making the collaborative action official. As the first local authority to develop a climate influencing strategy, the strategy was endorsed by Calderdale Council earlier last month, and we're really pleased that that happened. And I know that UK 100 have been using the work as a basis for their influencing toolkit, which is available in the delegate pack, so you can learn more about the process we went through. And colleagues from other local authorities can use it as a framework to develop your own influencing strategy. In fact, I'm hearing within our own council that some of the other areas are thinking around developing influencing strategies in areas like adult social care as well, so replicable outside of the climate world, which is really good. Okay, so what are our influencing asks? So we've got 3 key areas. So the influencing strategy sets out a series of asks which reflect the changes we need to achieve net zero for a greener, healthier Calderdale. So the asks have developed and they'll need to evolve in response to external changes and opportunities as well, so see it as a moving document. The priority areas we decided on in the Climate Action Partnership are around retrofit, around transport and around resources. So from retrofit, influencing change aimed at improving energy efficiency, transport, an ambition to have a transport system with a choice that works for all from cradle to grave, and resources, which are recognising funding limitations and identifying the roles and responsibilities within the public and private sector to best influence that change. So I don't have time to go into detail to all of these today, and I'm very mindful of the sign being held up and don't want to fall foul of Luke there. So I'm going to focus on some of the asks that are most relevant to what we have here to talk about today around retrofit and resource. So, bear with me. Okay, so we ask that we ask the government to publish updated planning guidance on how to align the retrofit of heritage areas such as solid stone wall terraces with the preservation of our environment, our historic environment. And on that, so solid stone wall terraces can be harder to retrofit, especially smaller terraces where there's not enough space for internal insulation. And I know we've covered that through some of the other sessions we ran earlier. We know external insulation can help with this, as well as reducing the cost and disruption of refitting kitchens and bathrooms. And external insulation can affect the character of an area, a material consideration under the National Planning Policy Framework. And I know we've had some of that challenges locally, and I'm sure there's people in the room, developers and planners, that could speak around that. Improving home energy efficiency isn't a consideration, so there is a tension between place and the impact of retrofit, particularly external retrofit measures like external wall insulation. So we really want national government, informed by the local views, to step up on retrofit solutions, acknowledging that improving our homes can impact on Making electricity more affordable relative to gas will help more consumers switch to heat pumps at the scale needed. And taxes on both gas and electricity should be reviewed to ensure that the consumer don't pay more for utilities overall, with consideration for those in fuel poverty to ensure they're not left behind. And we've been really clear that climate justice is actually baked into everything we talk about as a climate partnership, and that's an important precedent to think about with everything we're doing. Okay. Local authorities play an essential role in delivering climate action as they're closest to the communities by a long way. Many local authorities are taking significant climate action despite there being no statutory duty or often resource to do so. And current funding from central government to local authorities for climate action is, as Chris said, it's a bit of a stop-start and competitive, usually heavily oversubscribed nature, and we're really looking forward to that changing. A climate agreement that sets our legal duties and resourcing will bring the ability for long-term planning and delivering work at scale, as well as that accountability that we desperately need. So conversations around devolution are a big opportunity to go further and help clarify the role that our local authorities can and should be taking on a net zero along regional and national government. Organisations like UK 100, the LGA and SIGOMA are actively campaigning on this, which we're really thankful for. And I think, so many more projects and programmes must be delivered across the country for the UK to meet its net zero commitments, and developing a project requires upfront costs and time, and funding is needed to support that work. But an immediate question is, what does an investable project look like, and how much additional subsidy is needed to ensure all parties achieve an acceptable ROI? And that applies across the private and public sector. I'm going to try and wrap this up because I've been told now. So we're going to do a bit of a round table, and I know we're going to get into some of this with some of our guests in a minute. I've not got time to do that one, but hopefully we'll tease it out. So we're going to move on to a panel discussion. I think I've skipped a slide. Yeah, we're going to move on to a panel discussion and speak around some of the issues well, in the time that we've got left with our guests over here. So if we can invite our guests to the stage, and we'll sit down and we'll just run